Dámy a páni, prajem vám príjemné popoludnie a vítam vás na tejto tlačovej konferencii, ktorú organizujeme pri príležitosti delegácie, ktorá navštívila Slovensko, delegácie Monitorovacej skupiny pre demokraciu, štát a základné práva, Výboru Európskeho, občianske slobody, spravodlivosť a vnútorné veci. Chcel by som taktiež privítať predsedu Výboru pre občianske slobody pána Zarzalechosa a taktiež predsedníčku Monitorovacej skupiny pani poslankyňu Wilmés. A momentálne by som chcel dať slovo pánovi Zarzalechosovi. Mr. Zarzalechos, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for your presence here in this press conference, which marks the end of our mission to Slovakia. Mission of the monitoring group on democracy, rule of law and fundamental rights within the LIBE Committee of the European Parliament. Let me start by saying that we have spent 2 days in Bratislava, a really beautiful city that we have been unable to enjoy, unfortunately. Because of the busy schedule that we have had. We have made the most of, I would say, every minute of our stay here, and we have held over 15 meetings with different stakeholders. So let me start by thanking the Office of the European Parliament in Bratislava for putting together this program. And obviously to thank all our interlocutors, starting with the Slovak government, headed by Prime Minister Fico, whom we met yesterday, but also the Prosecutor's Office, the Council for the Judiciary, the National Council, where we met this morning two representatives of two of the committees of the Council, but also civil society organizations, media organizations, representatives of minorities, the Ombudsman and the Supreme Court. They all have provided with very valuable information for the purpose of the mission. Well, democracy, rule of law and fundamental rights are, cornerstones of the European Union. They're enshrined in Article 2 of the treaty, and they are the core competence of the LIBE Committee, in which the monitoring group was set up. The main issues that we have been discussing with Slovak authorities and other stakeholders relates to the fight against corruption. Let me remind you that at the moment we are in the final stages of the discussion of a new directive on anti-corruption measures that would include new definition and new sentencing brackets for offences related to corruption, but also the fight against organized crime in general. Organized crime is on the rise in the European Union. Is a real challenge, as showed by the latest report on organized crime produced by Europol and the internal security strategy that was presented by Commissioner Magnus Brunner to the Parliament. But also there were issues about the independence of the judiciary, media freedom, the status of the prosecution office, and also the protection of pluralism and civil society organization. As you know, the European Parliament raised concerns about some of the initiatives and legal reforms introduced by the current Slovak government. We are happy to see that there's been a willingness to engage with the Commission on this, on the drafting of these legal initiatives, and that has rendered positive results. And that means at least three things. First, that our concerns were not unfounded. Second, that the dialogue and the engagement with the European Commission and the Slovak authorities has rendered positive fruits. And third, that this process of engagement needs to be continued. with regard to existing challenges and issues that have to be tackled both at European and at national level. I think it's also important to remind that in July there will be published the annual report on rule of law produced by the Commission, and that is a very important instrument for the purpose of the LIBE Committee and the monitoring group. We have had a series of very frank, open, sincere and respectful exchanges with all the stakeholders, and I want to reiterate our appreciation of that. And now let me pass the floor to Mrs. Sophie Wilmésová, the chair of the monitoring group on democracy, rule of law and fundamental rights.
Thank you, Mr. Sarsalejos, chair of LIBE Committee. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here in front of you in Slovakia, as it has been said, but also in front of you to give you an idea of the findings and the discussion that were held. First of all, maybe the base of this mission. This mission is under the group of DRFMG. What is DRFMG? DRFMG stands for Democracy, Rule of Law, and Fundamental Rights Monitoring Group. When I insist on the fact that it is a monitoring group, it's because there is no way and no idea for us from the European Parliament to exercise any control from the DRFMG. We are here to monitor the situation, and we are mandated to do so and to report back to the European Parliament, which we are going to do. So the story with this mission actually started in January. In January, we had already the opportunity to exchange with members of different ministries, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Interior at DRFMG. They took the time to come to us like a lot of other countries. We are not only in DRFMG studying Slovakia, we are doing that with other countries. And they took the time to come and answer the question of the Parliament, for which I say thank you. The second point that I would like to raise is that this is the first mission of this parliamentary legislation organized, and we have decided to do it in Slovakia, the same way that the Cont Committee decided to do their first mission in Slovakia, which gives you an indication of the concerns that are raised at the European Parliament level. Concerns, for example, for Slovakia, which has led to a resolution in January 24. So as it was said, we met a lot of different stakeholders. We met civil society, we met judges, we met representatives of the media, we met government representatives, but also members of parliament, whether they sit in the majority or the opposition, which gave us a pretty broad idea of the situation here. The first point that I would like to make about the atmosphere of this mission, because atmosphere in a mission is very important. It is how we perceive what's going on the field. First of all, I have to say, like it was underlined by Mr. Sarsalejos, is that all conversation that we had, whether they were with civil society, stakeholders, member of parliament, or representative of the government to the highest level, were very constructive, interesting and respectful conversation. And it has to be underlined because, as a matter of experience, I can tell you that it's not always the case, which shows the willingness of working with the European Parliament on a certain issue. Unfortunately, I know that the Cont Committee last week when they came, it was probably something a little bit different, but I can only assess and attest what we have lived here so far. So as I said before, this is a monitoring group. So the aim is not punitive. We are not a court. We are not here to judge. But of course, we are guided by our compass. And our compass are the European Treaty. And our European treaties, there is Article 2, which is very important, and with which we are guiding our thought process. All discussions were held in camera. Why do I say that? Is that if you have specific question of who said what when, we're not going to do it. We're not going to answer specific question of who said what when, because the way we function in the DRFMG are in camera. And that allows what? That allows, in fact, to be able to have really thorough conversation, because the idea is to have a better understanding of the different point of views, even if sometimes we fully disagree. Another point that I would like to say, it's a general comment about the evolution of the politics in Europe in general, is that it's very important, I believe, for the member states to be free to set up an agenda, and the political agenda following their elections, and trying to achieve the reason why they have been elected. I think it's only fair enough. But I just want to point out that being part of the European family comes with rights, but also comes with duty. And when you are part of the European family, nobody has forced you to do so, but it means that you have commit yourself to respect the treaties. One, and in the treaties, there are the famous Article 2, which I would encourage you to read again. Last point on the general atmosphere is to tell you again that we as Parliament, an elected member of the Parliament on the European level, is that of course we stand with European citizens, and definitely with the Slovakian citizen. This is, I think, even not necessary to say. So now the findings. The first point that I would like to raise, it's about the general climate. We saw that whether we're speaking about the judiciary, or we speak about the media, or even the civil society, is that the rhetoric which has been used from government representatives, not only towards people from the opposition, where you could imagine that it would be a rhetoric between politicians, but the rhetoric that is being used is not only very grave, as far as I'm concerned. It has used elements of words which are not accepted even in the political arena, but it also is focused sometimes towards judiciary system, which is, for example, calling judges by name when there is a decision which is not accepted, which, of course, when you are allowing this in an environment, and towards judges, for example, you would create a climate which is not favorable, for balance of power, which is not favorable for independence of judges. We have seen, or we have heard the same from the media world. Media world is also targets from time to time from this difficult rhetoric, and I would like to point out that those rhetorics could lead also to endangering journalists, because if you allow aggressive rhetorics against journalists, you open a door to other things. Doesn't mean you are responsible for other things, but you open this door. And I believe, I've been Prime Minister myself, or Minister myself in a government, that we have a responsibility towards the media, since independent media is also one of the guarantee of the democratic value. Last but not least, it can also have a chilling effect on those media who would not dare to really go towards their investigation or towards their criticism if necessary, because it's not always necessary to critics, that's another point, which is also counterproductive for democracy point. Same goes with civil society and individual liberties. I would like now to go through three different points, which are the findings that we have had. First of all, around justice. Justice, first, the point that we are mentioning is that there is no national anti-corruption strategy, which we are waiting for that. So, of course, you all understand that I'm going to mention the reform of the criminal court. Abolition of the Special Prosecutor Office with the dilution, actually, of the work between 8 entities. Everybody had the opportunity to explain the why. We are definitely concerned about it, and I will explain you why. The second point is the restructuring of the National Crime Agency from NACA to UBOC, with, as a matter of consequences, a leave of expertise that we have found as well in the abolition of the Special Prosecutor Office. Is it a leave of expertise because of, for example, in the NACA case, pension or other reason? The reality remains that the lack of expertise is now felt, really, and it does have a repercussion on the quality of the whole judicial process. Statute of limitation, which has been diminished for corruption. Of course, there are big concerns about the fact that it might have led to the drop of several cases, which is always contradictory to what should be done. Article 363, that you all know, Article 363, which gives for us too much power to the Prosecutor General with zero safeguard. When I say zero safeguard, is that the decision can be made without external safeguard, which is a point that has been raised through the rule of law report, a point that we have addressed many occasions, asked if there was a will to install those safeguards. Government is on the idea that it's not necessary, which is not our point of view, since when you are using the Article 363, actually, as a matter of consequences, the whole process can be slowed down. Therefore, you absolutely need to have external safeguard. Last but not least, as far as the judiciary is concerned, is the use of fast-track procedure when the reform of the criminal code was done. You understand that when you use fast-track procedure, it can be used actually under the law and under certain circumstances. But in this case, even the constitutional law has expressed that the fast-track procedure was not appropriate in that circumstances. And it is very important. It's just not a technicality of the parliament. Why is it important? Because you have to give the time to the parliament to study the documents, to see what impacts those rules have, but you also have to give the time for appropriate debate, pro arguments and against argument. If you don't do that, you are actually bypassing a very big aspect of democracy. So sometimes it happens. The question that we are raising is that at the fact that fast-track procedures are concerned, they are used too often. About the media now. So as you know, we have met representative of the media. As you know also, there are broad concern about the transformation of the former public broadcaster RTVS into STVR, where there is concern and discussions about the members who were dismissed and then replaced, with, as a consequences, a fear of reducing editorial pluralism. It's a trend that raises, I think, legitimate fears about the shrinking space of critical journalism, the weakening of public media ability to foster open debate and diverse point of view, both essential to a healthy democracy. I go back to the safety of journalists. I've talked about it at the beginning of my talk about what we consider to be a negative climate and rhetoric against them. It has to say that the information that we have received is that, in fact, indeed, this transforms into the reality, in the objective reality of more attacks against journalists, not only, of course, from the government. I'm not speaking about that now. I'm speaking about the safety in general, the increases of SLAP, also was reporting that some journalists have really difficulty to access information or real debate with the politique in place. This is, of course, the words of the journalists. When we are addressing those questions to the government, they have another way of saying, but it is true that for us, this is raising legitimate concern. Civil society now, you will not be surprised that I will be address the NGO law that has been passed very recently, where it is requesting for NGOs to give, publicize the name of the donors of a certain amount. We are concerned about the fact that it gives excessive administrative burden, particularly to small organizations. But above it, we are questioning the whole issue of the right of privacy. And we are wondering if this aligns with the data protection standards that we have all to follow. As a direct consequences of this kind of law, you might also find out that donors are less keen to make their donation because, of course, we all have the right to privacy. We all have the right to give without being known, just because maybe some people doesn't want people to know what their inclinations are as far as NGO. And it could really has a strong impact on the financing. Last but not least, what's going on for the moment, the new constitutional amendment, which is now in discussion. It is not clear for us if it's going to find a majority in the parliament. I heard that discussions are made. We are not here to speak about the politic consequences of it, but more the consequences on the rule of law, specifically speaking about the constitutional amendment who affirms the supremacy of Slovak law over EU law in the matter of identity, etc. We have really big question mark about its compatibility with Article 2 of the EU treaty and the principle, of course, of the primacy of the EU law, which is normally the rule. So, conclusion, it is, I'm going to conclude with an answer to a question that I received when we arrived here. Somebody asked me, is Slovakia the next Hungary? To be very honest, I cannot answer that question very definitely. But what is sure is that there are a lot of signs that we are taking, that they are taking the same path, which is worrying. And this is why the different discussion needs to be done, because I have to remind you something, is that all those laws which has passed has also been discussed with European Commission. There also has been discussed with the European Commission, which shows that there is a willingness of this government to cooperate, which we like it. Upon returning on the mission, what's next, of course, because mission, they do not float around. What is next? We will, of course, organize a DRFMG meeting where we are going to debrief those findings. I think that it would be interesting to propose an intercommittee meeting between Libe, Kant, which was here as well, and jury. We are considering drafting a letter to the European Commission to highlight our concern. And we will see at the DRFMG level if we can come back in the near future because there was a lot of information which were not yet available since the very fact that a lot of those reforms are new. So we need to have a little bit of time to see how they are. And of course, the last word, like always, is a word of thank you. Thank you to all the people that we've met, member of government, representative of different stakeholders, judges, media, all the team here who have organized everything, and definitely the team of the DRFMG, which is Mr. Jurek, Mr. Fern, and definitely also the president of the Libe committee, Mr. Zarzalejos. Thank you very much.
Ďakujem veľmi pekne, dámy a páni, priestor pre vaše otázky.
Jan Šilhan, Czech television. I'd like to ask about if high representatives of government and officials you've been speaking about, if they gave you any specific guarantees in terms of the concerns you presented and have been speaking about during this press conference. As I told you before, I'm not going to enter in the specific conversation with each member of the government, because that would be against the rules that we are applying to ourselves when we are doing in-camera meetings. But you can imagine that, as I said, for example, for the prosecutor special power, or the reorganization of the National Crime Agency, that we had different points of view there. So guarantee of changes, certainly not, because those law has been passed and I have not heard from the government the will of changing them, because as far as they are concerned, they are perfectly okay. This is not the point of view that we are sharing with them, but as far as they are concerned, they didn't show us that they were willing to backtrack on any of them.
Yes, let me add something about first the mission and the delegation of the European Parliament has had no restriction in terms of the issues that we raised or the information that we ask from the government and from other interlocutors. And certainly it's only for us to decide what are the message and the what we can and we want to convey to you. As Madame Wilmés pointed out on explaining the issues that have been raised, this is an ongoing process. So the monitoring group will have to report to the LIBE Committee as it does on a regular basis. We will have to define in the debate on the in the LIBE Committee with all political groups represented the next steps to take. But certainly, as I said, this is an ongoing process because it's not only about the legislation in itself, but also the assessment of its impact and how the situation that we have been assessing here in Bratislava is evolving in the future. Madame Wilmés has already stressed or highlighted the points on which our conversation and our meetings with stakeholders have focused. But the important thing for us is to underline this nature of permanent process of engagement with Slovak authorities, with civil society organizations, with all stakeholders in the responsibility that we have as monitoring group and as committee in the European Parliament. Yeah.
René Števánka, hlavné správy. Dobrý deň. Dovoľte mi položiť dve otázky. Sú zistenia René Števánka, hlavné správy. Dobrý deň. Dovoľte mi položiť dve otázky. Sú zistenia monitorovacej Tak ešte raz dobrý deň. Števánka, hlavné správy. Dovoľte mi položiť dve otázky. Sú zistenia monitorovacej skupiny na úrovni porušovania práv Európskej únie? Pýtam sa preto, lebo v rokoch 2020 až 2023 v súvislosti s médiami boli niektoré médiá dokonca vypnuté. A moja otázka je, prečo nebol Európsky parlament aktívny takisto v tomto období voči Slovensku.
Thank you for your question. First of all, I don't think I have to admit that I was not a member of parliament at that time. But for the information that I could gather, the Parliament was active at that time. There was a rule of law report, I imagine, and there was a visit from the DRFMG group. What I find interesting in your question, and this is a functioning that I see often when we are, questioning or asking questions about the development on the rule of law in certain countries, not especially here, but in general, is that it always questions are answered by another question on another subject. So, fair game, fair enough. But the reality is that we are focusing on the development right now. Doesn't mean that what happened before, even before 20 is not relevant. Of course, it's relevant because it's part of a process, but it is not the point on which we are focusing right now, if you may excuse my frankness.
This is an argument that has been put to us on several occasions. I would just say that, those who miss the European Parliament in the past, I hope they will be happy to have the European Parliament now.
Okay, maybe I would like to ask the MEP, Mr. Freund, because you took part in both delegations, the current as well as the one from the previous week. Whether you could briefly compare these two delegations in terms of atmosphere, in terms of conclusion, in terms of talks, if it's possible.
Yeah, but just let me make it clear that if you're asking the question to Mr. Freund, right to do so. But you're asking a member of the committee on the mission in this case. The mission is represented by us institutionally, from the institutional point of view. I just wanted to make it clear that.
I will still give you the mic since you give me your headphones.
I think that this is a good continuity. There were two missions here. There was a few interlocutors that overlapped, that gave me the opportunity, some of the questions that I asked last week and maybe didn't get or not enough of an answer to ask them again. But I think in terms of the overall feeling, the country hasn't changed in that period. It seems that the government has changed a little bit how it dealt with the two missions. My perception just from the media was that there was more confrontation with the mission last week, when the main focus was on EU funds and how they're spent here in the country. This time that was different, although it's not a complete substantial change, I would say.
Priestor na poslednú otázku, ak nejaká. Ak nie, tak vám ďakujeme veľmi pekne a thank you very much.